we're doing fairly well today. If we do as well as we did yesterday, we'll get maybe $100. And I figured out the time that we spent selling yesterday, and we came up with as much money per hour as my wife got for being a secretary that day. So this is not a situation where you make a terribly lot of money, but it's more or less as if you had a good job today, or a decent job today. When I'm up in the hills doing my work, it gets kind of lonely and I don't see people for a long time. Then I'll come down and do this thing where I meet, several hundred, maybe 1,000 people. It's at first it's sort of a refreshing experience, but as a couple of days wear on, it gets sort of old. People are very interested. They stop, they look at the display and so forth. A relatively small percentage of them buy. In this particular case, $3 seems to be like a lot of money to spend. But just by enough people going by, we get some. It's very interesting and sort of gratifying to me that there's at least a degree of interest in the better pictures, like the one that we were looking at here. When I made that picture this winter, I didn't expect that we would sell it. I thought it would be something that I'd use maybe as a showpiece. And I've taken a prize with it and sold it a couple of times, so now we're making a nice profit every time we sell that picture. I had done that picture with intent of just making a very nice thing, and expected it to be mostly bypassed. The people do look at it and respond to it, just exactly like I wanted them to. And some of them have responded with money. Very good. I would say we get maybe half or 3/4 of our money from the decorative type item, the little fun plaque or the poster. We're going to have to bring out some even cheaper things so that people can part with less than $1. We'll do greeting cards with our sassy little sayings on them. It's most interesting to watch the public buy. If you go into a bar with many of these people, they throw $5 down on the bar, $10, drink until it's gone, throw down another 5 or 10. But to buy a piece of artwork or craft work or even just a little decorative object, they worry and worry and worry over their $3. It's amazing. And I don't think people really actually believe in originality anymore. Some of them are coming to, but they look at your object, they judge it solely on how much would that cost at Murphy's. And the person who will pay even a few pennies more to have something original that's unique in his house is still the rare individual. Money to us is rather a little different. If you consider it as a measuring device, like how well are we doing compared to, say, a person who's working in a trade like plumbing and so forth, we do lousy. But as it fits into our way of life, we can do a lot with $100. To us, that's a lot of material, and what we are buying mostly is raw material. We process most of our own food. Our really terrible expense is a mortgage, and we pay that with some. It takes most of our money. Now here's a unique and interesting thing. I thought that this business would work when I started 5 years ago, doing trying to bring our art center to life at that point, I wished I could have gone out and sold my material and then taken the money that I got and put it, as I got it, into our art center. I could not get anybody to give me $5,000 for that kind of a project. The only money I could get was $50,000 to build a good business. And that was money spent for bringing a camping facility up and building buildings and so forth. Now, I've got the artwork together by the skin of my teeth, and I'm using the art business to save the good business.
We talked with Frank Barney at his family's farm in Sherman, New York.
The family came here in the 1930s. At that time, the agriculture was very small around here. The people would take care of maybe a couple of dozen cows at most in the little traditional old wooden barns. I remember people still putting in their hay by piling it on a wagon and pulling it to the barn with horses. At that time, potatoes were a very good crop, and my family bought several farms to grow potatoes on. Each spring there'd be a big influx of people to do the planting, and then in the fall there'd be even more people here doing the harvesting. There'd be sometimes a couple of hundred migrants. The local people never really did get used to us. And then in the 50s, that type of agriculture kind of died off around here. The price for everything was really bad, and the potatoes got a lot of competition from the more mechanized parts of the country, so we had to stop growing those. So about the time I became an adult, the farming was sort of flat on its back. It seemed to be the reasonable thing for me to do, to go to agriculture school, and I did that.
Is that your brother over there, Frank?
Yeah, that's my brother. He runs the farm. Is responsible for bringing it back to life after it was pretty much of a dead institution.
What's your brother's name?
Brother's name is Jim.
Jim. The economics of dairy farming stabilized to the point that it's a relatively secure kind of business these days?
Well, what makes it secure is the securest people are the ones with large capital investments that they own themselves, and then they can sustain 2 or 3 years of losses in a row if it happens without going bankrupt. But if a man were to be farming with very little of his own money and having to pay interest on everything that he owned, a year or two bad, 1 or 2 bad years could put him out of business. And that's happened just recently in the past 2 or 3 years. This year's a little better. Couple last year and a year before were pretty hard for a lot of young guys starting out with a lot of borrowed money. A lot of them went broke.
Let me just ask you, do you have any kind of views about the kind of arts activities that Frank has more or less helped started through the Brushwood facility?
Views. I guess it's an alternative to what we can do out here as far as farming. The mechanization has drastically decreased the need for people in rural America, and this art, from the economic standpoint, is giving people income that wouldn't otherwise be able to, wouldn't have jobs. There's several artists in the area, and they're mostly all good neighbors.
I finished agriculture school at Alfred, came back here and tried to live for a year. It was terribly economically depressed situation on the farm, and I wanted to do something else. All that time I'd been drawing and painting on my own, badly, of course, but I went back to school at Fredonia in liberal arts, trying to find out something and trying to do something that was useful. Like every other farmer boy, I felt that art couldn't possibly be useful or a real way of life, so I avoided it. But I finally took an art history course as an elective, and it just fascinated me so much that I knew I had to do more with it. So, and I really couldn't achieve as well in any other field as I could achieve in that field. So I transferred, went to Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana, and got a bachelor's degree. I picked up some teaching so that I could, thought perhaps until I could do exactly what I wanted to, I'd teach a little bit. But I came back here again and taught in the local high school, or in the local school. I actually taught elementary, but here our local high school and elementary school is all the same thing. And after 2 years of that experience, I went back to Kansas to get my Master of Fine Arts, and get myself straightened out for what I wanted to really do. After that, I came back here again and started the project that I'm currently involved in. But I'd become aware that one of the biggest problems for artists in this country is to simply try to find a place to work. So no matter how I'd approached the problem, I would have eventually wound up trying to prepare some sort of a place where I could work, and I would probably have tried to fix a place up that I could share with other people. But the way things had worked out economically and socially, it was just as efficient for me to come here and start my project by myself, or start it right then. I started it. For the first couple of years, we worked with just our own resources. I was able to put up the shell of my cabin, but I couldn't get make any progress beyond that. It got pretty depressing, and I started to try to find out what I could do to finance it, to make it work better. I researched problem and found that I could borrow money from the Farmers Home Administration for a rural recreation project and arts and crafts camping facility seemed to qualify for their or qualify in their in their context. So I did that. I borrowed some money from them and then started the rest of the building project. In 1970, this was the first building that we built. It's a log cabin, and we went to the woods, cut down the logs, dragged them out, piled them up. It became just a shell, and we tried to live in that at first. Then, as in about 73, we were able to get funding and built the rest of these structures out here. If we step down this little road, we can take a closer look at them. Buildings here encompass this building, which is a small tool shed. We'll eventually add to it a metalworking area, including a forge. Then across the way, a little building that's currently a wood shop. This complex of buildings here then will become our three-dimensional sculpture area. Then this building here is our gallery, and our printing studios are upstairs. As we go down that little road, we pass what's a building that is the shower building for campers and so forth. And then on behind that, we'll have small studios for people that are working on things that they can carry into a little private studio. Our problem now, of course, is finances. Therefore, we are not as functional as we'd like to be. What we're doing in an attempt to rectify that situation is we're working in our own studios, doing prints and little novelty items which we sell in an attempt to accumulate enough funds that we can finish these projects.
We are willingly led by the unknowing and are doing the impossible for the ungrateful. We are done so much for so little for so long. We are now qualified to do anything with nothing.
This is do it tomorrow. You made enough mistakes today.
That's a favorite.
It's a favorite. We sucked yesterday.
And what about?
God created man. Then she corrected her mistake.
Oh, that's the first one chosen. Very good.
I don't get all the government I pay for, and I thank God for that. This one looks like a good one. Government getting all our money.
What was it?
Do something, lead forward, get out of the way.